The first option offered by Rashi is that with the Ani Hashem Elokechem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is making a request from the nation for an acceptance, a commitment for the fulfillment of the mitzvot, Kabbalat Gzerotai. This is done through a word association between Vayikra 18 and Shemot 20. They both use similar expressions. Ani hu she'amarti b'Sinai Anochi Hashem Elokecha, just as with Har Sinai, where I use the expression Anochi Hashem Elokecha. V'kibaltem aleichem malchuti, and there was a commitment for the acceptance of my sovereignty. Mi'ata kablu gzerotai. Now, in Vayikra, I am asking you to accept my gzerot, my mitzvot. Question 2 looks at the distinction that Rashi makes between the two commitments, that of gzerotai, my mitzvot, and malchuti, my sovereignty, in that it could be argued that implicit in the Kabbalat malchuti comes a requirement for the fulfillment of mitzvot. And if this be the case, the Ani Hashem Elokechem request, as Rashi presents in his first option to the Vayikra Pasuk, that Bnei Yisrael accept upon themselves a commitment to fulfill mitzvot, would seem to be unnecessary. Rashi himself has established the link between Malchuti and Gzerotai in two locations. Source number 1 comes from his commentary to the Aseret HaDibrot, Shemot 20 Pasuk 2, that states, Anochi Hashem Elokecha asher hotzeiticha me'eretz Mitzrayim, a commandment the Bnei Yisrael accept the sovereignty of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, a God who took them out of Egypt. Rashi appears to be addressing the obvious question that if we need to provide a descriptive to this God, a greater accomplishment is the fact that God is the creator of the world, the source of all existence. In the first of two responses, Rashi suggests that this statement, Asher Hotzeiticha Meretz Mitzrayim, is not merely a descriptive of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but rather it comes as a justification for his demand that Bnei Yisrael fulfill his mitzvot. In the words of Rashi, Kedai hi ha'hotza'ah, taking you out of Egypt is a sufficient reason for me to demand Shetiyu mishubadim li, that you are bonded to me as a servant is bonded to his master. Clearly, Rashi is making a link between the ideological commitment of accepting God as the controlling force of the nation and the translation of that commitment into the real world of mishubadim li, which in the God-man relationship would be the fulfillment of mitzvot. A second instance in which Rashi links the acceptance of God's gzeirot with that of his malchut can be seen in his commentary to the opening pasuk of Shemot Perek Chaf, Vayedaber Elokim et kol hadvarim ha'ela. The God spoke all of these words, referring to the Aseret HaDibrot, Le'mor. If one undertakes a word search, one would find that the Shem Elokim is rarely used, in fact almost non-existent, in Sefer Shemot. For example, in Perek 19 we only come across the Shem Elokim 3 times, and only one of the 3 relate to a communication between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and man. In contrast, in the very same Perek, the Yud Ke Vav Ke Shem Havaya of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is recorded 18 times, spread around 10 pasukim. This possibly is the problem that Rashi feels must be addressed, namely the switch from a God identified as Yud Ke Vav Ke Shem Havaya to a God identified as Elokim. And therefore he comments, Ein Elokim Ela Dayan. The Shem Elokim has been included in Pasuk 1 for the purpose of code. As mentioned earlier, Elokim represents the God of Gvura, a God of judgment, a God of accountability. And the Aseret HaDibrot opens with a reference to Shem Elokim because Lefi sheyesh parshiot b'Torah. There are segments of the Torah, mitzvot in the Torah, She'im asa'an adam mekabel sachar, that when those mitzvot are fulfilled, man receives a reward. However, ve'im lav, if the particular obligation is not fulfilled, eino mekabel aleihim paraniot, no punishment would be meted out on account of the lack of their fulfillment. Rashi goes on to say, Yachol af aseret hadibrot kain. It might be argued that the same standards would be applied to the aseret hadibrot that are to follow. Talmud Loma v'yedaber Elokim. It is for this reason that God introduces himself as Shem Elokim, implying judgment, because he is a dayan. He will judge the individual, the pareya, to punish man for their non-fulfillment of the mitzvot.